Call to order the LIFT board meeting. It is Thursday, July 12th, 2018, and it is 6:30 p.m. We will start with roll call. Carol Brezek.
Here.
Cindy Christensen.
Here.
Jason Henderson. Here. William Hopping. Here. Joseph Areno. Here. Jack Reinchecke. Here. And Kevin Seiler is present. We also have joining us Patrick Driscoll, the council rep. Tiffany Wooten has joined us. Wooten? Wooten from Whoville. There's no H in there. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Get it right when you say it. Okay. We'd also like to welcome our neighbors who have joined us in person or online. So next is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented to us?
So.
Second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the minutes to be approved. We'll do first the regular meeting of June 21st, 2018. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? So moved. And a second? I'll second. Any comments? I do have one. Beginning at line 83 of the minutes. My name is misspelled in a few places. Had the record reflect there's like 3 or 4 places where it's misspelled.
We'll do a spell check and get it fixed. I want to make a sailor out of you.
I'm not big into sailing.
Okay. So we'll get that done.
So I ask to amend the minutes. Motion to amend the minutes as stated. Is there a second?
Second. Did you make the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if I can.
I don't think. Move to accept the minutes as edited.
Thank you. We have a second. All those, any discussion? All those say by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the minutes from the special meeting of July 2nd, 2018. Motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Do you have that July 2nd in your packet?
Yeah, they're here. They're on there.
It's just right after.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
And you distributed before, so we had a chance to
Right.
look at them.
So 2 things. I want the record to reflect that this was not a regular meeting. This was a special meeting. On line 1, it indicates it's a regular meeting, and we have the same issue with my name. So we'll keep this simple. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as with the amendments discussed? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone present that wishes to make a comment? Remember that we ask you to state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Lift Board. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. 3 comments, and I wanted to come tonight because, some of them were great, so I'm happy about some things, and that's not usual, so I've got to say it. The minutes were super. I find them very functional, and they're going to be useful as a reference in the future. When you folks do work and you want to look back and remember certain things about what you did, these minutes will accomplish that. That is awesome. And, as a member of the public making comments. I thought the record of the public comments, when we care enough to take our time to come here and speak, those are our actions, and they're important enough to us to take time of our life to come. We don't get a vote. We don't get anything except to talk to you. So these are great minutes. Please keep up this level of record. Thank you very much. And I want to commend...
No pressure.
Yes.
Did you get that right?
I also wanted to commend you for keeping your path with getting a separate attorney. It's very important to separate the attorneys. I've been around long enough, which many members of this board have not, to have experienced the same attorney in both roles. It's not possible, especially for this board, for this authority. So great, thank you for keeping separate attorneys. Also, thank you for putting on the agenda the discussion of the LIFT application documents for tonight. It's something I feel is very important. We've got to know how to do this and what's got to be done before the applicant arrives. It's totally the right thing to do. Thank you very much. Now, something I'd really like to see is comparative documents from other URAs, or perhaps references, reference books, other sources that we can compare to. A problem I've seen with Littleton products is that oftentimes it's one thing that appears that somebody has produced for some reason, but there's no rationale for it. It's really important to understand what the options are and what the array of possibilities are and which ones fit us best. So I'd like to see that as part of the evolving discussion, because I'm hoping this is the first of a continuing series on making this right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other public here to make comments, we'll move on to the next agenda, which is the financial report, and we will turn it over to Tiffany.
Good evening. Before you have the June financial reports, and as in the past, I've included the same reporting format. The first report, page 1, is transactions from January 1 through 2016 through June 30th, 2018. And I think, just for your knowledge, the only thing that has changed from last month to June 30th is interest income of $526, and there was some property tax revenues of $22.60. So that's the only thing that has changed, and there hasn't been any expenditures from last month to this month. So I don't know if you want to go through each financial statement, or if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer at this time. I would like to give an update on the property tax refunds. So we've contacted all of the entities to verify banking information to ensure that nothing has changed since the last time that funds were transferred. And then I'm drafting a letter that I'll be sending to each respective entity indicating the amount that we're going to be refunding them. And then I'll work with Kevin to actually get the funds transferred probably in the next week or two. That's my anticipation.
Is there a motion to accept the financial report as presented?
I move we accept the financial report as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the report, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Tiffany. Committee reports. There are no committee reports right now. Unfinished business is we got website update. I did reach out to Wendy, indicated that the board had authorized the expenditure and to move forward with the redevelopment of that of our website, and to basically come up with a draft in the actual format so we would see what it would look like with the template that we currently have. She is currently working with what is his name?
Eric.
Thank you. Eric's supervisor to start working out when he can carve out some time for us. And I have indicated that Cindy will be the point person on that, since she's done a lot of the drafting and the
That's good.
simple graphics. So as soon as we get that lined up, we'll start moving forward with that. And I'm hoping that maybe by the next meeting, Cindy and Eric will be able to present to us some draft templates of what the site would look like as we envision it, that it meets our vision. Any questions? Yes, Carol.
The information on the website, when we had met earlier, we talked about going in there and doing some editing. Will you want that kind of comment from members of the committee prior to, I don't know what this next step is, I would hate for the website to be all prettied and everything put in there and then decide we need to edit. So is there, you may not even know exactly how this whole thing's going to roll out.
Yeah. I mean, we pretty much have what we've talked about in the past. I think there will need to be some introductory statements about, for instance, the board, rather than just put the board in, we might want to say, this is the board, here's the members of the board, and how they're set. So I've got some of that is going. But yeah, it would be good to kind of take another look at it and decide exactly if we need to do some edits or that type of thing. I know that we need to make sure that when we get to the project, we've got the correct information about the Columbine Square plan. So we'll need to make sure that that's there. Other than that, I think I just need to kind of meet with Eric and kind of figure out how it's going to lay out, and then we'll probably have a better idea of exactly.
Thanks.
As a reminder, I know Cindy's put that out there. One of the things we decided to do is when we had the page for the board members, each one does a little one paragraph, a little bio about themselves. So if you could work on that over the next month and get that to Cindy when you can, that would help her a lot as the layout, she develops the layout with Eric.
You just want a sentence or two, right?
Yeah.
Not a
No, well,
I'm actually thinking there's only about 3 left that I need to
need
cleanse.
mine.
Yeah.
So, okay, good.
I was just saying, I had over one, that's why I was raising my hand.
I've got a,
Yes, Jack.
I may be mistaken, but I think when you do develop websites, you can develop a beta model. I'm concerned about edits. The beta model can be restricted access to members of this board. I believe that's possible. I am not a web expert, however.
My experience is they're not going to let us do anything because it would require us going through their server, and they're very protective of it. So we can look at something
Well,
if it's given to us.
yeah, that's what I mean.
So we'll have to go on and look, but we're not going to be able to go through the back door and look.
That's fine. I'm not suggesting we do direct edits because then you're going to have so many cooks make it. But if we can look at it and then advise Cindy of what edits we think are necessary, I believe that's possible.
I think that's the plan. Okay, any further discussion on that? Or questions? Okay, next thing is the updated attorney RFP.
The only thing that I would mention is that we've attached it, the excellent conversation we had last week yielded a new version. The requests are reflected in the minutes from the special meeting, and if you go through, I think that really the key ones are on page, I just want to point it out for the record that it's there. Under request for proposal, this is line 500 or thereabouts. And if you can see it, it's mandatory requirements. Anyway, there's where we've added years of practice of law in Colorado with significant experience in urban renewal, listed and explained. And also, numerate 3, Lyft shall have the option to cancel the agreement at any time without cause. And there were a couple of other minor editing things, but those were the substantive adds, and they're here. And that's it.
And when do we project that this will hit the streets?
For this, I turn over to Joe.
Oh, sorry. The next date for the newsletter, the email newsletter, is this coming Thursday. And I've been in touch with the publishers, and we're on track to have our ad in there. Another possibility that I just occurred to me when I was talking to them was also posting in the Bar Association classifieds. And that is enticing because it allows you to have a shareable link that goes to something with more description than we're allowed to have in our little ad that goes with the newsletter. And so that the pricing that for the ad that we already accepted was $150, and then I believe we approved a budget of $200, and an ad in the classifieds would be an additional $100. So if we would like to go that route, and I was authorized to spend an additional $100, then we could do the newsletter and the classifieds, or with the same budget, we could just do the classifieds or the newsletter. I don't think it's going to make a very significant difference, but after the last meeting, the classifieds became more appealing and you have that shareable link. But the newsletter gets the immediate exposure to a wider variety of people.
Does anybody have? I have not pursued this question. Does anybody have an opinion on this? And Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to direct the conversation.
No, it's just, I'd say it's interesting. If we were trying to reach a younger demographic, I would say yes, because that's where they go with stuff. What is the demographics for lawyers in Colorado? How many of them are internet savvy and using that kind of stuff versus, an actual hard copy paper magazine?
The newsletter is an email.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
The hard copy, they take the month of September off, and October's deadline was before we had, August deadline was before we had an approved RFP.
Right,
so.
okay. I know what's others' opinion. I don't really have one either way. Yes. Or Jack had. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
So you mentioned that the board approved a $200 advertisement budget. It's $250.
Yeah.
So your item could fit within this budget, apparently.
And again, I was misspeaking, but the ad for the newsletter is $200, and then the ad for the classifieds, if I pay for it with my bar, so because I'm a bar member, it's $100. I would wonder if there's an ethical question there for me using my membership for the city. It seems appropriate. Or $150 for a non-member, so at most $150, which is put our total budget at $350, and I've been approved for $250, so $100 extra would get us also in the classifieds.
My first thought is just stick with the newsletter and see if there's a response before we do that. But I just thinking through this, I don't have any passion about it. But I kind of feel like we set the budget and we should stick within it and try the newsletter first. If we have to choose one or the other, I think the newsletter would be better than the classifieds. But that's just my personal opinion. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to that? Carol?
Jill, let me ask a question, because I don't know what this Bar Association classified is. Is it something that's emailed to the Bar Association? Is it a periodical that comes to everybody?
It is it's a page on their website that quite a few law firms post to, or law firms post if they have office space available, or they're looking for a new attorney, or they're looking for a temporary attorney. they'll post on this site. So it does get a lot of traffic. Sometimes they're looking for entry-level attorneys, which wouldn't meet the standards of our RFP, and sometimes it is more senior level. But again, really the main attraction is a shareable link, and we're able to put more information in the advertisement and share that as opposed to the little block of text that we'll get.
So the newsletter, we couldn't have a link?
So what I mean by shareable link is a link that could be shared in an email, for example, that brings people to the classified advertisement that tells them this is some information about the RFP, what the Lift Board is looking for. Right, J, if you want to receive the RFP, is the little block that we'll get in the newsletter, which just says Littleton Investford tomorrow, Littleton Urban Renewal Authority seeking an attorney to get the RFP. This is significantly less information in that little box. And then it only goes out in the email. So it's not, I don't feel very strongly one way or the other, whether we do one or the other or both, but I wanted to bring it to the board.
Do you think they're of equal value? Do you think that
they're of equal? I would say they're of equal but different value.
I mean, well, having the cert. I mean, I have no expertise in this. I'm just trying to sort of explore. Being able to more easily share it, that makes sense. I mean, I don't know. I think we should choose one because I think we should not amend the budget. Okay. That's just my personal opinion. If people were passionate about amending the budget.
So is the electronic classified, is that more a help wanted or space available type of thing, or is it actual agencies looking for legal services, public entities, public-private entities, or so forth? I mean, what I'm questioning is this really would it fit? Does it fit with this? If it's more of an employment, space for rent type of thing, I'm not so sure this fits.
And it is more that.
Okay.
It is more that. It would be outside of the norm.
So we may not be reaching a target where the audience that we're really trying to get. So I question
I think I'm hearing a consensus to stick with the budget and do the newsletter, and that if the results are abysmal, we can revisit it.
Yep. Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions for the committee?
I guess I'm curious, because Mr. Kemp solicits legal assistance from time to time. Do you think our solicitation will yield results?
I think it will. I mean, the reality of it is there are always firms looking to bring on more work. I think the real question is how much choice will you have? Will you have one firm? Will you have 3 or 4 firms? That, I think, remains to be seen.
But we should be successful at least getting one.
I would think so, and my only thought on the advertisement from my standpoint as a lawyer is if it's not significant more money, I think you are always better off hitting as many places as you can versus the fewer, because the reality of it is that somebody who does almost all of my bar stuff online, and I'm on the Colorado Bar Association website probably once a day. I would say it's, to the extent you are in more places, I don't think that's a bad thing.
I have a question. The RFP, now that it's created, if we were to learn of somebody who's a good opportunity or somebody responds, are we going to have forgive me if this is a stupid question, are we going to have a URL where the RFP will be located that we can just point people to and go, hey, here's the RFP?
I mean, we should be able to put it on the website as it is right now today.
Right. Is that the plan? I mean, the plan is it'll go up.
We had discussed it. We probably should do that. I mean, it makes sense that we have it somewhere electronically that people can go and download it,
right,
look at it.
I just knowing that it might take some time to get it on the website, I didn't want to put out an ad with the URL.
Sure.
and have the-
No.
So we will have one, I assume. Okay.
Yeah, but you have email contacts in there, and if during the process, there's questions developed that we answer that's going to all of them, they can go to the same place.
So to Mr. Kem's point, though, about maybe being willing to spend the money to be in more than one place, I don't want to shade the conversation. I really have no expertise in that arena, so if I don't know how to come to a decision on this. If you'd like us to go away and come back with a recommendation, probably could, but I don't know the best way to decide that.
I agree with Mr. Kemp, and $100 is not that much more for what it might get us. If we get through this process and we're not getting any results, then we're going to be sorry that we didn't do it. And we've got some set dates in the RFP that we need to adhere to. So I'm thinking for the $100, if Joseph probably knows more about what this site is like and how it's used, I would be comfortable with accepting your opinion, because I don't know about the site either, but I would hate to miss out on more opportunity to interview people for the lack of spending the $100.
It'd be a motion to go from 250 to 350.
350, that's, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to hear from Joe what you actually think.
Yeah, I think it's, like Mr. Kemp said, the broader reach is better. It's one of those situations where you pay $100, and if that gets you one more, then it's probably worth $100. Mm-hmm. So it would take very little for it to be a return on that small investment. And I think the most attractive thing, though, is the ability to put more information on a very credible, widely used website and be able to share links to that classified and say, hey, so there's this RFP available. People who see it could share it more easily than they could the advertisement in the newsletter, the email newsletter.
Okay.
Mr. Seiler, you, in your private life, you do solicit for professional services, albeit not legal. How many places does your institution advertise?
Well, because we're a state agency, we're mandated to use the Colorado website.
That's it?
That's it.
You don't go anything more?
And the only other thing we do is if we know that there are firms or contractors or vendors that we're working with that we may let them know. We will let them know by email saying, hey, this is up, if you're interested, here's where you can go and find it and download the information. That's how we handle it. I'm sure the city is something very similar.
Yeah, the city uses Rocky Mountain e-purchasing system, which a lot of municipalities use, and it's the only place we advertise. We kind of looked at that when we were looking for some internal contract attorneys, and the audience just wasn't in that arena, and so we chose a different path, kind of like you are.
Is that a site that we could use?
It is. I believe it's free. There's no charge to use it, and even vendors can sign up to use it for free. There's some enhanced services I think that may cost a vendor, but we just didn't feel like there were enough attorneys associated with that website, because it's more for dump trucks and fire engines and things of that nature. But we did use it for the city's audit, and we got a pretty good response from it on that.
And you certainly can. I think we actually put prosecutor recruitment on it. It just did not yield any responses, so that's when we focused on going to the Bar Association. But certainly, I don't believe there's any cost. Certainly, it could be put on that site as well.
I move that we expand the budget for advertising for the legal RFP from $250 to $300 to allow a second advertisement in the Bar Association.
Doesn't it be 350?
From 250 to 300.
Goes to 300, is that what we need?
350. 300 if it works as a Bar Association member paying the rate.
Okay, 350.
Maybe
That'll be fine.
Okay.
Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
I do have one thing, and I apologize, I didn't review the draft after the changes. But the language that you pointed to, Jason, I believe that amendment failed to include the language for the significant urban renewal experience.
Pardon me, I thought that language survived. Okay.
So what you referred to, the change you made around line 500, and then in the minutes it shows that amendment failed 2-4.
Okay. So you're talking about significant experience.
Yeah, I believe the sentence used to end right at Colorado, period.
Yes.
And there was an amendment to add that language,
Okay,
that amendment failed.
I apologize. So we need, I guess, a new motion with this line struck. Is that right?
I don't know, because
No, we approved it.
Oh, so I just need to fix it to reflect the record?
Yes.
Okay, then Jason will fix it to reflect the record.
Thank you. Hey, anything more with that then? Okay, new business, we want to discuss the lift application documents. It didn't get included.
It's at the very end of our move.
I asked Wendy to have that printed out. Okay, she must not have printed it out. So basically, we're starting to review the lift board in 2015, I believe it was, adopted how a development proposal would come forward to the lift board. Yeah, it was April 15th, 2015. So we requested that we start looking at this to see that this meets our needs, meets any current legal changes that may have happened since then, that there's to the urban renewal law. So the discussion is that, how do we want to move forward with this and addressing this application, and possibly looking at what other urban renewal boards are doing and what they're requesting. Joe?
Well, first, as I was reading this, I actually was thinking, man, I would love to see what other urban renewal boards do, or actually see a proposal for a project in another city that was actually a successfully implemented project. That aside, I guess I do have some questions, and maybe they're largely historical with this. With respect to the objectives that are listed and the criteria for approval, were these something that the lift board developed in its own right, or did these stem from another document or requirement somewhere?
Carol may know.
Yeah. The executive director is also was the executive director of several urban renewal projects in Colorado Springs. So he brought in some of their documents that the lift board worked from to come up with theirs.
And then the other question I had under project types in number 2. First, that paragraph is, I think it's a little unclear as to what's a requirement, what sounds nice, what's necessary. But at one point it says that the middle sentence, projects that create new or enhance existing neighborhoods are encouraged. Next sentence. In order to be considered a project, must comply with the Colorado State statute requirements
for blighted conditions, as well as demonstrate that it would not be financially viable without the assistance of LIFT. That's a requirement that I'm curious about. Did that come from somewhere in the urban renewal law, or and what does that mean, not financially viable without LIFT assistance? That they couldn't procure financing otherwise? That it would be a retail shops or apartments that nobody would live in, for example? I guess what does that mean? How is that shown? Where does that come from?
That's a good question. As I read it, I would think it would be whatever the project is, there may be elements of it that would take away the profitability of it. You know, if there's like a major part of this, a park's going to be developed, it's not going to be developed for any kind of retail or any kind of business venture, that may make it less fiscally feasible for a developer to take that on. So instead of putting up 500 apartments, they want to put we limit them to 100 apartments because we're doing a 10-acre park. Then that's where it becomes viable and it benefits the city and so forth. Where we have to help them with the financing to get it through. That's how I would read that. And there may be some statutory.
Well, and I think the intent behind allowing for the tax increment financing was that this is what we call conduit financing. We basically are a conduit through which the project obtains financing. And the intent there would be that if a project was either going to incorporate certain components that the Urban Renewal Authority thought were desirable, or the city asked the Urban Renewal Authority to consider, that then this financing would be granted, but it would really be based upon a recognition that there was some degree of requirement for it that the private market might not support. I would be happy, from my vantage point, to also take a look at that application and report back to the board. Certainly, one of the concerns I always have in these is, while this is a separate political subdivision that issues this debt, from my standpoint, it becomes what we call overlapping debt. It's our debt within a jurisdiction, even though we have no liability. And there can be a point where overlapping debt can actually affect other jurisdictions. You don't have any legal responsibility for it, but in the investment market, the concern becomes that maybe if one jurisdiction in that area isn't a good risk, the others aren't a good risk either. So I'd want to definitely spend some time with Ms. Hooton, just sort of looking at, from both a legal and financial standpoint, what concerns we would want to recommend to you to address.
Yeah.
Well, if I was going to underwrite this deal, this is how I'd look at it. Developer comes in with a project, and he says it's going to cost me X amount of dollars on a virgin site. However, this site has existing conditions, good, bad, ugly, whatever else, but it's going to cost me X plus Y. It's feasible at X, but it's not feasible at X plus Y. So you, LIFT, I would really like to have your participation to take care of the Y component. And it's non-recourse debt, really, to the project or to the developer. And it's, it's non-recourse, it's tax incremental bonds, which are revenue bonds, which are a little bit difficult to sell. But regardless of that, what we'll be taking up is the stuff that will make that site a virgin site, or a site, in other words, that is economical to develop. So, in other words, if you've got multiple ownership, and you got a holdout, you need to condemn a piece of property, well, then you can do that. If you've got a tangle of utilities and streets that just don't match with what the developer says he can do to make it beautiful for the city, then you deal with that. That's what my interpretation of this is if somebody came to us and was asking for a project. And And so now we're in the business of being in a partnership with an entity that has, we have no interlocking financial responsibility. We take care of our side of it, assuming that they're going to take care of their side of it, and they think the same thing. And so what we want to make sure is both sides will act responsibly and do what they're supposed to do. However, it's much easier for the developer to believe that we'll do something because we're a public entity and we're driven by, politics, whatever the city has, a desire to make something happen. We're dealing with a private entity here. Who knows? If they're, halfway through, they're going to not have the financial capability to perform. That's what we need to figure out. And we have to do it in such a way that, well, if you're a bank, you get a lot of private information that you can keep private. We're a public entity, and we probably need some of that private information. The question is, with the attorneys we're about to procure, how do we keep what's private, and what we can let the public know about, let them know about. So the public doesn't think that we're making a deal with the devil, that we're actually doing a really good service for the city. And a reasonable person would say, yes, this developer is responsible, this developer will perform. We get to the point that we've got the thing built, it's brand new, we hope that it leases up, don't we? Or it sells, because you still do not know. But that's part of the risk of real estate development. We are alleviating some of that risk for the developer because it's an enticement for them to do something for the city, which, in most areas that this happens, there's real blight. In our town, there's not so much. But there is certain needs to change things around or improve things. So if somebody came in with some kind of plan, and of course the only area we have right now is Columbine Square, we haven't heard anything about it, at least I haven't. But that doesn't mean something wouldn't just come in. And we'd have to go through the whole motion of that. But I'd sure like to know up front, is this developer that's making this proposal to us, solicitation, are they reasonable people? Will they perform? And are they a good partner for the city to do development?
Bill?
I think to Joe's point, the wording maybe needs some wordsmithing, but I agree with Jack that what we're really trying to do is leverage the developer to do a piece of the project that would not otherwise be feasible for them. So but it's a benefit to the city. So we're saying, look, we'll help you out with that piece because the benefit comes to us. We realize that you could do it in a more profitable way without that. So it removes part of that feasibility or profit for them, but we say that's the benefit to the city is worth us picking up some of this. So we'll help you with the financing on that. So I think maybe it needs to be wordsmithed a little bit. I don't know the answer to where it came from, but I think the intent has been.
My reading is somebody wants to come in and say, hey, I want to build an apartment complex, but I can't afford it. And then we say, okay, well, here's some money. But the way you've explained it, both of you, is...
Yeah, because there are other public entities. If somebody wants to build low-cost housing, go to CHASA. You'd be surprised how many public entities will provide grants or funding for a project. Our role is fairly specific, and it is stated in the law. I think we're kind of limited to certain civic improvements or trying to get a single ownership of a property and then turn it over to a developer. A lot of times projects don't go because there's always one holdout. God bless that person, and God bless the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Yeah.
But this is a way to fairly compensate the person that wants to hold out, and to do it in a public manner where the city can say, or people can say, no, we don't want to do this. In fact, we have that kind of ordinance in our city now. If we were to do a project, we have to have the approval of the.
Carol?
One of the things at the Downtown Colorado Inc. conference, there were some people that talked about how they go about analyzing a developer coming in and their financial limitations. And I think that if we get to that point, we need to seek the people out that do this for a living, that know how to read and meet with us. And the developer's going to have to expose some of his books and bank accounts and that kind of information in order for whoever it is that we have advise us whether or not it makes sense for us to do it. And then there's a whole other side of it. You've got to figure out if the increment is going to pay the debt. So we need people who have that kind of experience to help guide us through that. One of the things that doesn't show up in here, and the previous lift board had determined that anybody who wanted to come and talk about an urban renewal project, it was going to cost them $60,000 to sit down at the table to talk. In fact, the $60,000 that was in the projected budget as revenue was that $60,000 because they thought there may be a single project. And that money was to be used to offset the expense of hiring the people that it would take to help us through the process of determining what we could and couldn't do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just wanted forgive my ignorance, but my way of understanding this, just to put some shadow on, demonstrate that the project would not be financially viable without the assistance of LIFT, is I think, just to put some slight shade on the question of the scenario of an apartment building. Let's say that we've decided for whatever reason that we like certain kinds of developments more than we like other kinds of developments. So if somebody comes in and they go, definitely could do an apartment building of a certain kind, but I definitely couldn't do this other development of a certain kind without your help. But we have interests, and so we say, okay, well, that meets our interests, and so we have help to give. The person still owns their property, so they could walk away. If they don't want our help, they could develop whatever they want. This is our tool. I'm really saying this more for the record than anything else. This is our tool to help create a city the way that we think that people want us to. But having said all that, I don't know how you prove it. They would have to show, we'd have to kind of, to some extent, they'd have to show us spreadsheets, and then we see if it passes whatever sniff test there is. But I haven't been through this process to see like how much you can actually look under the hood. I just don't know.
Banks do this every day.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
And believe me, not everybody's perfect. You make bad loans. You also make very good loans and stuff that really helps communities out, because that's the intent of a commercial bank, to do that kind of thing. And so the same thing with the municipal bond merchants and everybody that gets involved in this project, because you're going to have architects, engineers, you're going to have appraisers, you're going to have environmental investigators, you're going to have market analysts. It's just a whole host of people that gets on this. You're going to have a ton of information. Typically, the way a bank does it, you've got a loan officer, a senior loan officer that would look at a project. And then they're going to be looking around at us if we're involved in the project, or other people that do have a hand in the financing. They're going to want to know who all the principals are, and they're going to get down to the drill down, okay, you got limited partners in this deal, when's the capital call? There's all kinds of things, but it gets down to one loan officer who is credit analyst, comes up with a proposal, it goes to loan committee, and it gets distributed the night before. And then at the loan committee the next day, they all go through it, and they say yes or no. It's a wonderful process. If you haven't sat in it, oh, it's just great. But that's exactly what, we need to replicate that, but we need to replicate it, I believe, so that it's a public forum, so people can look over our shoulder and say, yeah, you were reasonable in what you did. Because we could still make a mistake and end up that the project gets built. It's the most wonderful project in the world. All this retail space is there, but there are no businesses to occupy it. So the bonds go, go into default. And then people will blame the board. But, the thing is, somebody's got to make a decision. But if we make a prudent one that you can point to and say we did it, well, we did our job. I can sleep at night with that. Even though it technically is a bad loan, but you did the best you can with the information you had at hand.
Mr. Chairman, is there, do we have some method of, and forgive me if this is out of turn, do we have some method of reaching out to the property owner to see if they have a timeline for bringing us a project?
I know that the previous chair had sat down, had a conversation with them probably almost a year or so ago.
Okay.
And it didn't seem to really go that far. I do know that they have, within the last year, have talked to the Performing Arts Center here in town, because they're looking for additional space, and they see that as a potential. And they, according to them, that was received favorably with them as being maybe part of that project of creating space for them, because they're busting at the seams there on Littleton Boulevard. They do a lot of teaching programs with elementary and high school kids, and they don't have room for sets and all that kind of stuff. So
Arts Center.
It's town hall. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Arts Center.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So they're not looking to leave that location, but they need a site almost as big just to do all the other support and instructional stuff that they do. The representatives they talked to seemed favorable. I don't know if there's been any talk with the city. I know there was back and forth with their, when they were trying to get them to tear it down once it was, they had the barbecue inside the building. But now that that's been cleaned up, I haven't heard if there's been any movement. I think there was the proposal a couple of years ago, which did not hit the city nor the Lift Board at the time favorably. Basically high-density apartments. I don't think there's anybody that really wants to see that at that site. But then again, that goes to what we're talking about is the economic feasibility given the conditions there. That may be for him what makes it economical.
Right.
Yes, Carol?
That's an interesting idea of putting town hall on there, but that is a government entity, which then does not produce property tax increment, which is a whole nother.
Like I said, I'm just telling you what's been shared with me. And we don't have anything in front of us to say that may never be part of a project.
And I understand that, but I think we need to also understand that there's different things that can happen on that property, and if it's a government that is coming in to do something, the picture's very different.
I don't think that's a government, that's a
Oh,
nonprofit.
Mr. Chair, I think we're getting a little bit off the agenda. The agenda item is really focused on the application. Let me bring you back to that.
Yeah, thank you. I think, so the question is, what do we want to do with the application so that if Mr. Chang and his organization or anybody else in that area, because there are other property owners other than that one, were to come forward with a proposal, what do we want to see? What should it include? What shouldn't it include? And that's what's on the table tonight, and I think thank you, Mr. Kemp, for bringing us back around to that. I think we need to look at it and say, okay, how do we want to evaluate this? How do we want to look at this? You know, are there a couple people who wish to, you know, we set up a committee for this to start looking. Because it's going to take some time for people to research this. You know, go and look at other urban renewal boards, see what they're doing, what's been successful, what hasn't been successful. You know, this may not fit our needs. You know, Mr. Kemp's going to look at it and give us his feedback from the city's perspective and legally perspective if there's been any changes there with the, what's the word I'm looking for, the statute. So, do we have any thoughts on what our next steps are going to be? I mean, or we could set up a separate study session where we just go through it line by line and start, you know, go outside of the regular session or do a committee. I mean, we're open. We have different options.
I kind of like the idea of a study session and a committee, but a committee who can, you know, lead the study session so they've done the deep dive and come to us with sort of an agenda to look at together, to keep us focused and highlighting the most important things.
I think we've talked on some other things that we definitely have to do our homework on. You know, if we get a proposal tomorrow, there's a lot of other things, but we first need to have, what does it look like before it gets to us? Then we can start answering the questions. Once we get this done, we start answering the questions. What are we going to look for? What's the prudent steps to take in evaluating a proposal? We can have those discussions and start coming up with a framework on how we're going to attack one if one comes in front of us.
I'm not even sure if we got a solicitation tomorrow, we could actually react to it.
It would be a challenge. It would be a real challenge. I mean, we would not be meeting once a month. Carol.
In reviewing this for the meeting tonight, there's some things in here that, and for instance, on page 2, design objectives. Specific design objectives will be developed for individual urban renewal areas, and I don't believe that's been done. So we have language in here that I don't know that we have anything to back it up, so I think that would be a good place to start. And then it also says that we need to comply with the design guidelines for the urban redevelopment area that's been established by the city or the authority, and I don't know what those are either. So I agree with Jack.
Does that apply to them or us? I don't mean to interrupt you, but just so I understand.
Well, we need to have design objectives identified so that when a project comes to us, it needs to comply with those design objectives. And to me, this is a big issue, which means we need to do some community outreach. We need to understand how do we create those design objectives if we're not talking to the community that lives over there? And same thing with the guidelines. We have objectives that are listed here, but we don't have anything to back them up.
Well, I think it's problematic. Even this is what the developer would come to us, that he's developing how this meets the urban renewal, and and it's going to comply with existing or zoning requirements. Well, if right now that let's say we just take Columbine Square, that's zoned for retail.
It doesn't say zoning, it says design guidelines, and that's different than zoning.
Let me weigh in here. I think this is part of, as you go through the revision, a significant change that's about to occur is the Bellevue Corridor Area Plan, which contains design guidelines, is going to the City Council. And I think as part of this whole process, as you work through the application, I know certainly as I work through it, I would want to include things like that, because that is exactly, normally what would happen is you would look at a specific area plan as part of evaluating whether it met those criteria. And so it seems to me, what I'd recommend to this board is figure out the process you want to use to review the application, and then that process can be started, because I don't think you can certainly solve that tonight here.
Right. Yeah, I think there's there's already been two things that we've already brought out that are problematic for us. I think it's just gonna take more time for us to go through it, so.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's a long meeting. I think it's a very long meeting.
It is, I think it's a very long meeting. And I think there's some more homework that needs to be done before we even have that long meeting. And I think Joe's suggestion that we form a committee to start doing that deep dive and help guide the board as whole to where the discussion should be. And figure out how we get this application language written. And then that, the board as a whole can meet as a study session, and then out of that, come up with a plan. Yes, Joe?
I move to establish a committee to review the application and return to the board with recommendations as to what areas need to be reviewed and understood better and perhaps changed.
Move to establish a committee to review the application
and report to the board regarding areas of improvement or change. And then I would also add to see what other urban renewal authorities are doing. I don't know the best way to phrase that for your.
are doing.
Yeah, I guess
To review urban renewal.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to define everything the committee is going to do down to the letter, but essentially to review the application and come back with some recommendations as to how to proceed to evaluate and adjust it if necessary.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I think the matching with other urban renewals is a little bit wide open. Because you can look at Denver. If you look at Denver stuff, it's not applicable to what we're doing. They're so big and so bureaucratic. I'm surprised they get anybody that's a taker, but they do. I would hope that with the spirit of the amendment that we check out communities that are roughly the same size as Littleton. And see if any of them had any successful ones. You get on the internet, you look at Englewood, and they've had a couple of dogs. You'd like to find some place in Colorado, using Colorado law, that has had some success. Colorado Springs is a little bit large for us, but there might be some other
Certainly
places.
look, I think Arvada has had a very functioning urban renewal program. Wheat Ridge has had, so there are certainly some cities that I would say in the 50 to 200,000 person range that would be appropriate to look at.
That's my point.
Any other further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have any volunteers for this committee? Okay, the chair will not, Jack, Joe, and Carol for this committee. We appreciate your service.
So if we meet as three, is that a meeting?
Yes,
It is.
you do have to post it, 24 hours. And just work through Wendy. I'll let Wendy know that there's a subcommittee and that when you meet, you'll have to post it. And then she'll post it.
To confirm my understanding, to meet about meeting is not a meeting, so we can get together and.
Yes.
That's okay.
Okay, any other new business? Okay, this is now the time for the second time for public comment. Is there any public that wish to add any comments at this time? Okay.
I'm Pam Chadbourne, I live a block and a half from here in Council District 1. So I just would like to say the previous Urban Renewal Authority that established the, where DISH is now, the Riverfront Center, failed within 4 years, it went bankrupt. So Member Rychicki's points are well taken. But let me point out, that Urban Renewal Authority actually wrote an RFP for what they wanted there. They, as you pointed out, removed property owners and created a space and put out an RFP. The company that they selected they thought was very well funded, but that wasn't the right reason. And they went for their second opinion 4 months after they awarded the contract. You don't get your second opinion after you award the contract. You get your second opinion before you award the contract. And their criteria were so well established that they could write the RFP. That is where I want to see this board go. We have failed before. I went to a council coffee, in which a woman was there who was very bitter about Littleton's bonds. We had issued bad bonds. This still is the reputation that we have. So, folks, you have work here to do. I'm going to tell you it's very possible work to do. I don't think this is unachievable. I think it's worth doing and exciting. So I wish you enjoyment of it and good luck with it and success, because your success is ours. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's all on you, Jack.
No other public comment this time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
All right.